All right, in case you forgot or didn't see The Crow 2024, here's how it goes down. Shelley, a well-off piano prodigy, is called by her friend Zadie, who has video of something terrible that happened at a party. Shelley thinks she's crazy to do this, whatever it is, but after Zadie is intercepted by Marion and her goon squad, Shelley goes to meet up with her.
Zadie's lost her fucking mind. She just sent me some video that you shot. Meet me at Zadie's. I'm gonna check on her.
Shelley warns future plot exposition device Dom and heads out, only to be followed by scarred goon Wickham, and perhaps intentionally, she runs into some cops and is hauled away for drug possession. Meanwhile, we meet Eric, whom we briefly saw at the beginning tending to his dying horse, a la the comic this is based, sorta, on. He's doing great for himself, by which I mean he's trapped at Serenity Park Recovery Center, where he's bullied and forced to wear pink pajamas every day. He's, I guess, a drug addict and has violent tendencies or something, but we only really hear vaguely about this stuff. Speaking of vague, he maybe considers offing himself with a homemade shiv. But then Shelley arrives, and he's immediately smitten and starts drawing them titties.
Is this me?
But uh-oh, while this is going down, we're introduced to Rogue, our big bad Jeffrey Epstein by way of Paul Atreides. He uses his magic voice to force Zadie to kill herself and explains that he's immortal and made a pact with the devil, yada yada yada. His job is to send innocent souls to hell, and boy howdy, he's good at what he does. I'm not entirely sure what he actually does to be so rich, but whatever. His name is on the wall in a boardroom. He's a big deal. Eric and Shelley bond. Rogue's goons somehow find out where she is and arrive to spoil the party, but Eric helps Shelley leave via an escape route. He seemingly only hasn't used himself because he hasn't had a reason to escape. Love.
Fuck this place. I'm rehabilitated.
Anyway, he uses that shiv to free himself. It's symmetry. It's like poetry, it rhymes. They hitch a ride into town, you know, the town where an immortal billionaire is trying to kill Shelley. That town. And they stay at a friend's swanky apartment.
Jesus, this is crazy.
It's my friend's place.
I've heard some criticism about the clothes fitting Eric perfectly, despite being a 6'4" god king. But to be fair, all signs point to Shelley's friend being a male model. Also, if this is what takes you out of the movie, then I've got some bad news, friend. Anyway, they bond and fall madly in love over an unspecified amount of time. You know, as I'm saying this all out loud, it's dawning on me that this thing either was written in a very flippant manner or it got edited to shit. Either way, there's a lot of narrative leaps you kind of just have to go with here, so bear with me. The fun is spoiled when Zadie's body is found, leading Rogue to basically demand they find and kill Shelley and anyone else involved with the leaked video. Eric and Shelley, meanwhile, have found a life for themselves and even get one of those swanky mannequin-filled apartments that seemingly only exist in movies and music videos, where they become SoundCloud musicians. Which, by the way, I think is fucking rad, no joke. Having the super poetic Eric, who's in a band in the original work, be a SoundCloud musician in 2024, absolutely the right way to go. Fuck the naysayers, I love it. Dom, meanwhile, warns Shelley at a club, and she and Eric return to that rad power couple pad only for our main goons to be laying in wait. Eric and Shelley are killed, and Eric is sent to what I'm just going to call purgatory. Now at this point you may be wondering, where's the Crow action in the Crow movie? Well, here we are, 36 minutes in, and well, Shelley and Eric are dead, so there's that.
You'd think they'd come up with something better, wouldn't you?
Eric meets Kronos, his sort of spirit guide, who tries to explain to Eric what's up, but Eric has a hero's journey to follow, so he refuses.
Fuck this.
Only to be physically pushed into his new reality. So here we are, 40 minutes in, and Eric is finally the sexy SoundCloud zombie that we paid to see. Sort of. First, we have to see Eric get used to his powers. He's shot and stabbed by a cop, ACABs the shit out of said cop, and then discovers that while he can still feel pain, he can't physically die, and all of his wounds magically heal in a really painful way that's super rad. Then Eric literally and metaphorically makes the jump that proves his love for Shelley, and Kronos returns to explain to Eric that Shelley is on her way to hell, and as we already know, that Rogue is an immortal prick who needs to be cut down to size, and that in order to save Shelley, Eric has but one option.
Kill them all, and you get your lives back.
By the way, I find it fascinating how a film that takes so many narrative leaps to get its story across feels the need to really hammer home the basic Crow rules and exposition. Wild choice. Anyway, Eric gets a gun from his tattoo artist friend and sneaky sneaks into Shelley's mom's limo outside Shelley's funeral. He gets more useless information from her at the 51-minute mark, by the way, and snoops around Shelley's room where he finds her stash box and a Rogue Company ID. Natch. Now he knows where to find this fucker, so he cool guy walks his tight little ass down to Rogue headquarters where he accidentally shoots one of his killers. But it's okay. Just then, old One Eye is sent a text from Marion to head to Dom's hideout. Remember Dom? He's the exposition guy. It's what he does. So Eric calmly follows Marion and her beau Roman, by which I mean he winds up smashing his body through their car windshield and fails to kill anyone. Damn. Love the detail, by the way, of the driver getting a bullet through his cheek and actively realizing that he's still alive. Solid detail. Solid. Rogue forces Shelley's mom to kill herself, having gained enough info to bank on Eric having the secret to escape death. Careful with greed, my dude. That shit'll kill you. Eric, meanwhile, finds Dom. Remember, he got the address through text. It's important. More texting. And warns him to fuck right off.
You do what we couldn't do. Get the fuck out.
Bye, Dom. Then, at Rich Model Friend's apartment, Eric finds Shelley's phone and finally sees the video of her killing her friend at Rogue's party. He then goes, by the way, this really fucks him up. Like, really fucks him up. Despite everything he's seen, this is what fucks him up.
You need to sit down, bro. Eric, sit down, please. Eric, come on, just sit down.
He then goes to Tattoo Friend's place to express his self-doubt. Tattoo Friend is killed when Winchell and his boys come by for Eric, only for Eric to also be killed in the process. Ugh. He returns to Purgatory, where Kronos informs Eric of his predicament. He's lost faith in Shelley, meaning he's lost his fancy crow powers and must move on.
Your love needed to remain pure. The enemy of love is not hate, it's doubt.
I never doubted her.
Faced with no other options, Eric makes one final offer.
Mine for hers. My soul for hers.
God accepts the deal, and Eric is sent back, where he murders the shit out of Winchell and his team.
He's already dead.
Now, at around an hour and 15 minutes in, Eric uses tattoo ink to paint himself a somewhat emo clown face after finishing up a previously unfinished tattoo, and dresses himself up, complete with a freaking katana, to get to some crowing. He learns through yet another text that his next mission will be at this incredibly soundproof opera house. Anyway, he kills Roman and Marion and learns that Rogue is actually at his country estate. And so, after traumatizing a bunch of rich people, Eric heads out to the woods, i.e. where he started technically, because the center was in the woods. So, full circle. It rhymes. Ooh. And falls into Rogue's trap. Rogue tries to take Eric's powers. They're both sent to Purgatory, somehow, and the tentacles of hell drag Rogue down, trading his soul for Shelley's. She is given another chance at life, and Eric, maybe goes to hell? I don't know, something studio notes. The end.
Now, right from the jump, you can probably guess that this thing is a little unwieldy in the story department, and to that I will say, yes, absolutely. I don't think it's poorly written per se, but it does do that thing that bugs the shit out of me, where characters just learn every plot point by reading a fucking text message. You know, use a fucking password, motherfuckers, come on.
Hold this.
The love story definitely goes too long, and with not enough to make us really care. The way it's edited, it feels like a weekend when it's clearly got to be at least a week or two, maybe more. It's impossible to tell how long it takes for them to get their mannequin apartment, who any of these fucks are, anything. Time as a concept has almost no interest in this film, so the love story comes off as rushed and therefore unbelievable to most audiences. For what it's worth, I was able to buy in thanks to this scene where Eric and Shelley come closer and closer together through shared trauma without speaking a word. It's a beautiful, simple way of getting across a lot of unseen emotion. Now, what's most frustrating is that the one thing every Crow movie knew was to skip the romance. We as an audience have experienced countless fictional blossoming relationships, have probably experienced love ourselves, and are altogether pretty used to the concept. There's a reason that montage is used so often in romance movies. That said, if you tell us right off the bat that these two know each other enough to have fallen in love, we will believe you. However, if you decide to show that entire romance, you risk presenting something that feels too manufactured. And that's what I think happened here. Mismanagement due to, oddly enough, time constraints. To which I say just don't put the romance plot in. Just don't do it. Now this brings me to the first 2/3 of the film, by which I mean the non-Crow stuff. While, again, the love story worked fine for me, it's reasonable to be a bit upset with a film called The Crow that doesn't even plop paint on the dude's face until an hour and 15 minutes in. That's unacceptable for this franchise. Even Wicked Prayer was smart enough to get Eddie Furlong into some face paint before the 40-minute mark. Like, look at this guy. You got a crow on his shoulder, the fire behind him, that Furlong smolder, and some fucking paint on his eyes. But the paint is not the point. It's just representative of the overall problem, that it doesn't feel like much happens before sequence 7 in the Opera House. Which is weird because we do get a car action scene, a gross abdominal wound, and a couple good old-fashioned apartment-based fisticuffs before the big showdown. It should feel like more than it does. And I think that's really just down to the villains.
Myron.
We technically get a bunch of retribution starting around minute 45, which isn't terrible, but it's a clumsy version of Eric, meaning he's not fully in Crow character, unlike Brandon Lee, who essentially spends the entire runtime of the OG in gallows humor spewing clown mode.
Is that gasoline I smell?
His first kill comes at about 20 minutes in, via a baddie we've spent very little time with, but who has made his presence as a character known. In fact, this early bar scene with the 4 main players does more to cement who these assholes are than the entire runtime of the 2024 version. It doesn't matter how often you show her name on a cell phone, no one's remembering Marion. Now, there's something to be said about Rupert Sanders' directorial flair. He makes pretty films, but his feature career is so sparse that it's hard to gather exactly how he views the world.
Then I have to do a deep dive.
However, you do get a sense between this and Ghost in the Shell that he appreciates a sort of retro-futurism vibe whenever he can get it. It's not a huge presence in The Crow, but elements like Roman's car and the corporate looks of the villains feel like they belong more in a new RoboCop than The Crow, and I think that's neat, actually. To juxtapose the gritty urban gothic feel of the OG with a more streamlined, modern approach could be the boost that a franchise like this needs. And if he had gone a step further and made the whole thing decidedly retro-futuristic, or had perhaps even set it in the not-too-distant future, we'd be having a very different conversation, because this movie would fucking rule.
You have no idea what hell awaits you.
Yeah, I do.
Unfortunately, this style is really only hinted at for the most part. There's a sense of modern drug culture versus the flashy upper crust, but it's diluted due to just how little time we spend with our gang of killers. They're not a bad group of, well, baddies, but none of them really stands out, and the ones who look most interesting really get very little to do. For example, I bet you didn't notice that in that plot summary, I gave a bad guy's name 2 different ways, and one was completely wrong. I don't remember which one, because I don't remember the names of these fucking characters. Except for Roman and Marion, but I've watched this movie too many times. Finally, I can't not bring up the elephant in the room, Brandon Lee, and the idea that making this so-called remake is some kind of attack on his legacy. While I understand the reservations anyone has with harming the legacy of such a tragic icon, I personally just don't think it's fair to judge a film for that. Making this Crow in no way changes the original, just like City of Angels, Salvation, and Wicked Prayer didn't harm that legacy. They're just kinda shitty sequels to an S-tier cult classic, and not exactly breaking the norm there either.
Hey, it ain't no ghost.
You just have to remember that it's not meant to be the original, be it in story, character, or even style. All you have to do to separate them is give this sucker a subtitle, like, I don't know, The Crow, Sympathy for the Devil, or The Crow, Stairway to Heaven. Yeah, you thought I'd forgot about that shit, and I did, until I started writing the script. There was a TV show. No one talks about that fucking harming the legacy. Come on.
Good speech, though. I didn't want to interrupt you. It sounded good. You gotta write that shit down.
Where most would agree the film succeeds is in the opera fight, which I think is a double-edged sword, so to speak. What's missing isn't anything in the opera fight itself, but what happens after. The filmmakers have played the long game, and it all has to end with a satisfying finale. Out of the 8 sequences a film is likely to have, number 7 was just knocked out of the park, and so we move to number 8, the denouement. Now, this is where I think things really fall apart, since a nice bow on the material would have solved a lot of problems. Give Rogue something to do, allow him to actually get one up on Eric, anything to just make him a viable threat a la Top Dollar in the original, and you've got yourself a satisfying final third. But that doesn't happen. Our boy Rogue goes down like a chump, and in a scene that's frankly a bit nonsensical. So, when the credits roll, I believe most of the audience is left wondering, what the fuck just happened?
What is this place?
Now, there is one more place where I think The Crow failed, and it really affected things, and that's the midpoint. For The Crow, this is the moment Eric goes from learning about his new powers to actually getting on with the revenge portion of the menu. In the original Crow, the midpoint is this meeting between Eric and Sergeant Albrecht, wherein Eric learns essentially what the audience already knows. In the new version, Eric once again visits the apartment of a black character who gives him information that we as the audience already know, but it doesn't have any weight like the Albrecht scene, which leads us to the denouement where both men team up against Top Dollar. It does, however, put him on a new leg of the mission by giving him the ID card. Not that it really does any good, but he's got it. I guess it's not really the denouement, is it, in The Crow? I'm a little full of shit there. It might actually be sequence 7. I might be full of shit. It doesn't matter. Yeah. The big problem here is that the midpoint is, in my opinion, not what it should be. His mission of vengeance should, in theory, start at the end of Act 1 as he's thrown out into the world as this spirit of death. Instead, he only really learns anything substantive from Dom, who tells Eric about the video just over an hour into the film, i.e. past the midpoint. Now, this would work much better if Eric had actually made it into Rogue's headquarters, maybe gotten a better action scene than the car attack, and even better, had maybe gotten a chance to actually meet and see Rogue in action. But that doesn't work because the writers are adhering to structure a little too tightly. They need Eric to have doubt in Shelley, and that won't work if he knows fully what he's dealing with. So, in my opinion, the midpoint should be the film's current end of Act 2, the deal for his soul in exchange for hers. I'd move Jeffrey Epstein Crow to the end of Act 2, and the opera fight would stay right where it is, leading to a grand finale at Chateau Rogue, where Eric battles it out with our super predator. It's not a perfect solution, but if we're going all in on a supernatural villain, you might as well have some fun with it.
Maybe. Let's see how we get along.
But Michael, you say, I thought the title of this video was about The Crow being good. You make it sound like it's a piece of shit. And yeah, I guess I kind of do. But I don't think it's a bad movie. It's flawed, certainly. However, there's enough style, gorgeous lighting, moody bullshit, and yes, even gory violence to keep an honest viewer in their seat. If you are one of those who can get past that it's a remake of The Crow and just take it as another supernatural revenge flick, it's well worth your time, and I believe if you open yourself up to it, you'll find it an entertaining entry in the Crow franchise. It's kind of the very definition of a 2.5, 3-star flick. Perfectly fine, well done entertainment. I know that's not a shining endorsement, but I legitimately think that this was a solid film. Despite its structural instability, despite the villains being immensely forgettable, despite that sexy SoundCloud zombie not getting his face painted until the back half of the fucking film, despite all of its shortcomings, I believe that The Crow is good. Go watch a movie. Oh, also great use of Enya. Oh my gosh.
It's gonna take me some time to give you all that is mine. I'm looking ultra fine from your view from behind. It's gonna take me some time to give you all that is mine. I'm looking ultra fine from your view from behind. My phone, working play out. You got what's coming, you gonna shout. Sit right down, boy, hands in a cup. I'm gonna show you exactly what's up. Gonna give you that booty flavor. You're loving my booty flavor. Straight 7 booty flavor.